there and welcome. My name is Juliana Hock and I help people who may or may not have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I help you go from suffering to feeling in control and productive. Welcome to Easy ADHD Coaching. And today I invited a very special guest, Dr. Cristine Ehly, to come on here and talk about the topic of ADHD, gut health, and its effect on everyday living for someone who has ADHD. So without further ado, let's introduce our amazing guest, Dr. Cristine Ehly. Dr. Cristine Ehly is a naturopathic doctor and a craniosacral practitioner who provides holistic healthcare to adults with ADHD. She is especially interested in the intersection of gut-brain communication, the stress response, emotional regulation, and mindset. By addressing each of these areas, she helps her patients transform overwhelm and inattention into the focus, calm, and confidence that nurtures more harmonious, productive lives. Thank you, Dr. Cristine Ehly, for being here. And to kick off today's very special session, I wanted to start with asking Dr. Cristine Ehly, what brought you to this space of, ADHD and gut health to advance your career?
Sure. And by the way, hi, Juliana. Thank you for having me. I'm like really excited to have this conversation with you today. Um, so the naturopathic and the craniosacral side of things, I kind of fell into, like I found out about them. They really resonated with me. The naturopathic medicine part, in the sense that it is holistic. So it's not just about addressing symptoms in an individual. I mean, that is important, but you're looking at, well, what's contributing to these symptoms? Like, what are the underlying processes or like root causes to whatever someone's like health experience is? And it's nice because it addresses the physical side. You can address the emotional side of things, which I'll talk a little bit more about that today. And you can also look at the mental side as well as the spiritual side, if that's a place where people feel comfortable kind of exploring and playing around with as well. The ADHD aspect in gut health really came about because I got to a point in my career where I was really wanted to start specializing. And so I asked myself, who is it that I would want to treat? Like, who is my ideal kind of patient? And I was like, well, I would love to help people like myself because I have an understanding of who I am, and I think I could help other people like me. And I was diagnosed with ADHD in my junior year of college, so it took quite some time, as it does for many women. And caveat here, when I say women, I'm talking about women that were born in what are traditionally and usually scientifically, biologically female bodies. So it's like people who are born with a uterus or ovaries, or maybe just ovaries. I do have a friend who was born without a uterus. That happens. Or at some point in their life were cycling and menstruating, or will be at some point. And one of the things that I identified in that, or I kind of like started to reconnect with that diagnosis of ADHD and start doing a lot more research into it. And it just really clarified a lot of kind of my journey as a human being and how I got to where I am, and even a lot of the challenges that I faced in school, really starting in college and going through med school. And yeah, so I was like, I want to help other women. And again, it can be people in women's bodies or anybody that identifies as a woman. I wanted to help them with their ADHD and kind of give them a leg up a little bit. Which that's, I don't mean leg up in like a derogatory sense, like there's something wrong with you. But ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and in many cases, it is a disability. It has a lot of really amazing attributes. And what my job and my passion is how do we take care of our body, minds, and heart spaces so that we can kind of emphasize those like really positive aspects. Like sometimes inattention isn't a bad thing. That can be life-saving. In some cases, but basically, how do you bounce back from that? Like, don't let those things control you. Um, yeah, so that's how I got into it. And the gut part, I've just always been fascinated by the gut, along with the nervous system. because from a metaphorical standpoint and physically speaking, those are the two systems in our body that help us interpret the world around us and
Mm,
help us determine how we are in the world, how we relate to the world, and in some cases, how the world is relating to us. If any of you out there are nerds about polyvagal theory, that might ring a little more true, or that might make more sense to you. Um, so yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And there's this huge interplay between what our head brain is doing and the way it's relating and communicating to our gut brain or our gut nervous system and all the little microbes in there. And they're talking back and forth
mm,
all the time. So, and a lot of that information, if we're talking about one of the most important parts of the gut brain communication involves something called the vagus nerve. And 80% of the information um, involving the vagus nerve is actually going from other parts of the body to the brain. So there's a lot of information coming to from the gut or gut brain up to the head brain. And then the head brain kind of has to decide like how are we going to respond and how are we going to change the internal environment to like react to everything else. So it's a really fascinating area that I've just always been really involved in. And one of the I had gut symptoms as part of like my ADHD presentation. And when I do the things that help my gut be in more balance, then like my brain works better. So I was able, even in med school, when I started doing more natural treatments for the ADHD, really was able to recognize that. So it's one of the biggest things that I focus on with my patients is helping them realize that too and figure out how to take care of their guts in the best way possible.
mm. Yeah,
That was a lot.
I have a lot to acknowledge. I just wanted to start from the top, if that's okay, of
Yeah.
just I want to, I don't know if empathy is the correct word, but how hard it is to have a late in life diagnosis.
Hmm.
And something I preach within my LLC coaching practice is are the invisible symptoms of ADHD. And what that means is really how is ADHD displaying itself like
Hmm.
through your like how is your ADHD showing up for you on your day-to-day life? And
Hmm.
so much then to find out about that late in life is a grieving process to learn. I also
Yeah.
want to like seriously acknowledge like the hormones that go with ADHD, and it's something like there we're still getting research on for the general public,
Hmm.
even online. But there's so much at play with ADHD and hormones in that aspect. And I wish more people knew about that because
Right.
like I what well why I wish people knew about that was because how much it impacts our like the output in our life and like our daily performance, and how it really impacts like our mood or being able to complete a task or whatever,
Right.
like feeling like like okay when you wake up that day. And it's just so crazy that hormones can impact that, like within a 30-day calendar. So I don't know. That's
Hmm.
kind of cool. And also wanted to say that in order to prepare for this recording, I had to look research, was a neuropathic doctor and a craniosacral doctor. And it's like, it was what I clearly was able to see through Google was that not only, not, but like I had to like base if being someone who is dyslexic, if I don't understand like the Latin part of a word, I won't.
Hmm.
Okay, that's really weird. But so basically, what I was able to understand through Google is that how much like the brain is like not even the prefrontal cortex, but the cranius, that part of the brain is connected to the entire like the bottom part of our body. And it's just insane to me that, or you
Like
better.
the craniosacral system.
Yes, and how
Yeah.
much it all affects in the body. So if that being said, I would like to take off, with the next, conversation of, understanding ADHD and its impact on individuals. And if it's okay,
Sure.
I'll say a little blurb about this. But basically, um, ADHD is so much more than the outward display of ADHD. So what I'm trying to communicate to our audience is there's so much under the surface that we don't know about. And, you also mentioned like co-conditions with ADHD. So basically what I'm saying is just because you don't know something about your ADHD doesn't mean you're crazy or it doesn't exist. So just educating the general public of, ADHD is more than just being able to focus and being productive and to be organized. So that being said, I just wanted to explore, I've heard of, because I work with adults and families, so I work with kids, and it's insane that when you're working with a hyperactive child and you do like a diet elimination or whatever, you can slowly see a kid become their best self because
Yeah.
diet greatly impacts their symptoms. Like, I'm not saying we're going to talk about kids right now. I'm just saying, exploring how nutrition, especially sugar and gluten, can affect ADHD symptoms, if you agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sugar thing is interesting because there's some like medical experts out there that are like, sugar doesn't really affect ADHD, but like not in my clinical experience. Some of the doctors that I've trained with, that's not what they've seen either. And I do want to address the sugar and gluten. I want to add one more thing to the nutritional piece, if that's okay. People who are diagnosed with ADHD, even if you haven't been and you have sort of that constellation of symptoms that goes with ADHD, um, we tend to have lower levels of certain nutrients. So those are things like vitamin B6, vitamin B9, which is more commonly known as folate, magnesium, zinc, vitamin D. So one of the important things with nutrition is just making sure you're eating I don't want to say right because I don't want to like say right and wrong because that like implies a lot of good and bad. And I think that's really counterproductive. But making sure that you're eating the types of food that give you one, the macronutrients, protein being a big one. Because protein in our body gets broken down into what are called amino acids. And those little building blocks are what help create things like neurotransmitters or even the enzymes that help us break down those neurotransmitters once they've been used. I mean, yeah. The other thing is like in order to make neurotransmitters, which the big two that most people are familiar with in relation to ADHD are dopamine, which has a lot to do with reward and cognition and memory and motivation. It's also involved in things like sleep. Dopamine and then serotonin, which is usually like the mood hormone, although it does so much more in the body. We have to have all those little micronutrients, those different vitamins, those different minerals, to basically assist in the construction of those neurotransmitters. So nutrition is a huge part of ADHD. That's why, like, yeah, if you're on an ADHD medication, that's great. But addressing nutrition is also equally important because a root cause is you're not deficient in like Adderall. That's not why you have ADHD. But like Adderall helps, but you may be deficient in magnesium. You may be deficient in your omega-3 fatty acids. That's a lot of people with ADHD are, and those are super important for the nervous system to function in the way that it needs to. So that in general is like important, like making sure you have all those things. So like working with a nutritionist can be really helpful to just make sure all those nutrients are there. Going to the sugar. So sugar plays a role in a couple different ways. First of all, high amounts of sugar or sugar/glucose dysregulation, where you're having like sugar spikes and lows going back and forth like this. A lot of people with ADHD have. It's one of the reasons we're at higher risk for metabolic disease like diabetes. And now some of the research coming out is showing we're at higher risk for Alzheimer's, which like there's a sugar inflammation piece to the Alzheimer's that we're seeing now too. But when we have those high amounts of sugar, or when that sugar is just kind of all over the map and we don't have those steady levels throughout the day, it actually triggers or activates changes in some of the cells in our brain that create inflammation in our brains. And when that happens, we actually start remodeling our brains in ways that destroy some of the really important neural pathways that allow us to do things like focus on a task or memorize something we learned, or, you know, people have processing disorders that come with ADHD too, like being able to understand like what's coming into the body and like perceiving it. That's what the brain does. The brain perceives and interprets things. Um, so that's like a big reason why sugar is an issue. And it's not surprising, like it gives us like dopamine hits, so it's kind of nice. Like I love me a chocolate cookie. Um, the other thing too is many people have like when you are eating a diet that's high in sugars, and for the record, sugar, like if we're talking about like basic nutritional science, like for our macronutrients, you have your protein, your fats, and then your carbohydrates. There's different carbohydrates from like most complex structure to least complex. So you have like your fiber, your starches, and then the simple carbs. And that does matter for maintaining like a healthy level, like maintaining levels of sugar throughout the day where you're not up and down and have those highs and lows. Um, but usually that means you're eating a diet that's more processed foods, and a lot of those processed foods are not nutrient dense. So in the sense that you're eating a lot more sugary things, like a cookie versus a handful of blueberries, you're not getting those cofactors, you're not getting those amino acids or those building blocks that one help us make our neurotransmitters and are also like anti-inflammatory, antioxidant to like not balance out, but combat that damage that's happening in our brains and our nervous systems. So that's the other aspect of where sugar can be really dangerous, is just you're not getting the nutrients that you need to function optimally. Um, the gluten, and it's not just gluten, it's various other food sensitivities. And when I say food sensitivity, that's different from an allergy.
Mhm.
And I don't want to assume that people know the difference. So if it's okay, I'll take like a moment to
Yes.
explain that real quick. It's
Mhm.
different immune reactions that are happening. A true allergy is like someone who has like a peanut allergy, where if they're exposed to the peanuts, their throats close up and they can't breathe. That like they go potentially into anaphylaxis. A sensitivity is more of a delayed response that our body has to foods, and those can be really tricky because those responses can happen up to 2 or 3 days after ingesting that food. So we don't always make the correlation that we're reacting to that certain food. And if you're eating that type of food all the time, it's like, well, then you're just going to feel brain foggy all the time or
Mm.
have constipation all the time or gas or whatever. Um, but gluten is it's a common food sensitivity. I do want to say just because it is doesn't mean that everybody is gluten sensitive. But it's worth checking into. Um, as well as other things like dairy, corn's a big one. I don't know why my mind is blanking. There's a lot of like major sort of food groups that people have sensitivities to. Some people have sensitivity to eggs, which can be really
Mm.
difficult. Um, People have allergies to eggs as well. But what happens is you can get inflammation in your gut if you're eating a lot of foods that are causing these inflammatory reactions. And there's sort of like a vicious cycle, like to be dramatic about it, where a lot of us have quote unquote leaky guts, which means that the cells in our intestinal lining have the spaces opening up between them. So larger food molecules can get in that aren't supposed to get into our bloodstream. And our bodies go, whoa, I don't know who you are, goes on high alert, mounts an inflammatory or immune response. There you go. Um, so eating those foods create inflammation in the gut. Cool fact, I think, is that at least 70%, in some cases 80% of our immune system is in our gut. So when we're having an immune reaction in our gut, it actually tells the rest of our body like to have an immune reaction as well. So it's not always isolated in the gut. That means you can get inflammation in other parts like the musculoskeletal system. Like if you
Mm.
think about somebody who has autoimmune condition like rheumatoid arthritis or something like that, that's immune system gone out of control from like chronic inflammation. But
Mm.
then it travels up
Mm.
to the brain, right? A lot of information is going from the gut to the brain. And then we get things like brain fog. We have difficulty concentrating. we're much more moody. The scientific term for that is emotional lability, but like moodiness, I think people understand. And we get like more anxious. Like I know that when I consume more sugar, I get more anxious. Um, so that happens with those food sensitivities, and then they perpetuate things like leaky gut. When we have inflammation in our gut as well, it alters the microbiome, and the microbiome is so important. Like I think half of our cells are actually microbes. So we're like half human, half microbial, basically, which like is kind of cool. If there's anybody out there with OCD, just forget I said that. Just read a really interesting book where a character had that as an issue. But so that's the other thing is like the bacteria in the gut are key too to that like communication that's going up and down our body. They help us digest our food. They help us make neurotransmitters. I think 90% of serotonin is made in our gut, not the brain. I think about 50% of dopamine is made in the gut. And they don't cross the blood-brain barrier, so they have to signal other ways. And those bacteria help us, yeah, they help us modulate inflammation. So if we have more beneficial microbes in our gut, then we have more balanced immune responses. Our inflammation resolves itself after the repair is done, because inflammation is a repair mechanism that the body's developed. We're able to digest our food, get all of our nutrients, right? If you're not digesting the food well, you don't get it. So, yeah, so those are the big aspects of nutrition, and I know I got ahead with the gut stuff, but it's a
No,
good lead in, I
so
guess.
thank you for saying that. So, but I feel much more like educated about,
Mhm.
how sugar, gluten and nutrition, how affects our, our output of our body, of how it
Yeah.
can affect. So like I have a better understanding of sugar and nutrition and how it plays with this beautiful body that we all have,
Hmm.
including our listeners. So how on earth does the gut relate to that? Like all of those things.
Yeah. So again, just like the sorry, I just have my notes because I know like
Please,
I'm very
please,
prone
please,
to going off on lots of little side trails.
please, it's
Um,
okay.
Yeah, well, so there is that aspect of like if we have inflammation in our gut, that triggers inflammation in other parts of the body as well as our brains. So again, like focusing is a lot harder, controlling our mood is harder. Our I People tend to be more impulsive when they're inflamed. Inflammation contributes to other, disorders or conditions like depression and anxiety, which for me, depression is just a symptom of a bigger underlying thing going on inside of you. Um, yeah, and just the fact that like those microbes and the balance and the types of microbes that we have in our gut are helping to make those neurotransmitters that help with like dopamine production, serotonin production for mood, both those neurotransmitters involved in sleep. Like I don't know any people with really with ADHD that don't have an issue with sleep.
Mm.
The major or the majority of people do. And if you're someone with ADHD that doesn't, that is awesome. Like, um, so yeah, it's like really kind of all those things I just said, and like even other, not just the dopamine and serotonin regarding neurotransmitters, but our those microbes in our gut help us make things like GABA, which is a really calming neurotransmitter. It helps us make things like acetylcholine, which we need that to do all the things in the body, really. That's one of the main neurotransmitters of the nervous system. Um, so yeah, just really like having a healthy, balanced gut, which includes the microbiome in the gut as well as the gut's nervous system or the gut brain, also known as the enteric nervous system, if anybody wants to kind of like nerd out about that later, really help make sure that our brains are healthy, that our brains are not inflamed. It helps us make sure we have all the nutrients that we need for our brains to function the way they do. It makes sure that we can absorb those nutrients from our food. If you're consuming all the foods that you need to consume to function optimally for whoever you are as a person, but you're not breaking down that food and breaking down the food and absorbing those nutrients, like That's half the battle. Yeah, and also just modulating that inflammation and the immune response throughout the body so that we're as healthy as possible, which again includes our brain, just because of all that crosstalk that's
Hmm.
happening between the two.
Yeah, there's
So,
definitely a lot going on
mhm.
in the body and the processing system. So, based off of when we started this conversation to now, it really sounds like the gut system is really, it really impacts mood, sleep, and focus based off of things you've
Yeah.
been saying. So it sounds like you are a pro at, gut health, how it affects your brain, and then also like putting a highlight on nutrients. So
Mhm.
how would you help if someone came to you for needing assistance with, taking a direction with their, gut, brain, and nutrients? How would you help them within your practice?
Sure. So, from a nutritional standpoint, we're looking at what someone is eating, also what they aren't eating, because that's a big piece of it too. We're looking at the timing, like the pattern of eating, because, and again, a lot of people with ADHD do it. I still do it sometimes, depending on where I'm at in life. Like, we're not eating consistent meals throughout the day, or the types of meals we're eating are consistent, and that creates the opportunity to have those dysregulated blood levels or blood sugar levels, so we more likely to get those highs and lows throughout the day and those spikes. um so working on that, like working on food timing, I've learned that it's typically less productive and potentially more harmful to just start eliminating.
Mm.
Not for everybody, it depends on the person. A lot of the patients and a lot of the like women patients that I work with um, have a history either of eating disorders or disordered eating, which is like an eating disorder, but not really diagnosable yet.
Mm.
And I've had disordered eating before, so it's not always a great idea to just start removing things. So some of the tips and tricks I have are really about just adding things in. And like when we talked about the brain being inflamed or like being exposed to free radicals, excuse me, um, even eating like a handful of blueberries every day gives you all of these really amazing plant chemicals that are anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. Um, and that's an easy thing that you can grab because the easier it is to prep food, the better, and the more likely you're going to eat foods that your body needs. Um, and in that vein of things, like making sure you're having enough protein. And for many people with ADHD, like we can get bored of things easily. So switching some of those like grab and go type foods out. Like right now I'm in one of my hard boiled egg phases because it's easy to grab. Like I can grab a couple hard boiled eggs, peel them real quick. Let me tell you, using an instant pot to hard boil eggs makes peeling them like woo. Um, and I'm the deviled egg. I'm in charge of deviled eggs for family dinner, so I have a lot of experience. But you can like take three hard-boiled eggs. Don't worry about cholesterol with eggs. That's kind of a myth. Grab like a handful of blueberries. If you're like me, I'm kind of a rabbit. Like I'll just sit and chomp on like romaine leaves and like at least you get like a couple different macronutrients in there and you have something to go. There's a lot of really great if you do eat animal protein, there's a lot of relatively healthy like meat sticks out there. I usually look for something that's whole 30 compliant isn't the word that she uses anymore, but like whole 30 compatible.
Mhm.
And if anybody hasn't heard of the Whole 30 diet, you can look it up. It is an elimination diet, so it may not be appropriate for everyone with ADHD to just start eliminating, although it's a way to learn. And you only do it for 30 days, but it gives you recipes that typically are more anti-inflammatory. So it's a good rule to follow. Making sure that you can see those healthy things. I actually saw something on Instagram that was like put things in your refrigerator on the refrigerator door that you want to eat more of. Like condiments you'll go for when you need condiments, so you can hide those in drawers. But if you put like your fruits and your veggies and stuff like on the door, you'll see it. So I don't know, that was a cool kind of like ADHD hack. don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry. You're
Mm.
going to be more likely to buy the sweets and things. Um, so those are some nutritional aspect, just like adding things in versus always necessarily taking everything out, unless it's safe from an emotional standpoint for you to remove stuff, then like go ahead and like go on that journey. That's awesome. Um, oh, the other thing I wanted to say, and a great reference for this is the book, The Glucose Revolution, or on Instagram, it's The Glucose Goddess. She's a French biochemist, and she talks a lot about how to have those like maintain healthy levels of sugar in the blood throughout the day. So one of the things you do is like even the the order of the food that you eat per meal. Start with your fiber. So those are the much more complex carbs. Then eat your proteins and your fats, and then you can eat like more of the like simple carbohydrates or like simple sugars. That slows down the breakdown of the food. It takes more energy to break down fat and proteins as well as fiber. So you're not having as big of an influx of sugar going into your blood. And if you're eating those other things first, you might not be as hungry for the sweet things after. So it's
Mm.
about kind of like doing workarounds, and also being really gentle with yourself and compassionate, like, which can be really hard when you have ADHD. There's a lot of shame and guilt. But like where you can like celebrate the wins because give yourself like seriously give yourself stickers because they're awesome. Um, so that's kind of like the nutritional aspect for the gut health. Like again, addressing nutrition is great for gut health. You can also do things like really being mindful when you eat. You don't have to say grace or anything before you eat something, but even taking a break to sort of like center yourself and be like, I am eating now. Like that can really put you in the mind space so you're not distracted. And if you are able to take 5 minutes to eat in a non-stressful moment, you'll actually absorb more nutrients because you'll be in more parasympathetic rest digest state for your nervous system. So you'll be able to break food down and absorb those nutrients. But making sure you're really chewing food really well because part of digestion happens in the mouth with that chewing process. And if you do have gut problems going on, like get assessed by somebody. Like make sure there isn't like in it like a dysbiosis, like imbalance in your microbiome. Like make sure that you do have enough digestive enzymes, like and you're breaking down food, and like make sure you don't have inflammation in your gut because it'll get perpetuated if you're not addressing it. So yeah, what were the other questions? I got really excited again and told you guys a lot.
Oh no, I love it. So if someone were to take, just a baby step
Mhm,
out of their own curiosity to take one step towards what we're all talking about today,
mhm,
I really like what I felt could be achievable for me. You mentioned food timing, but
mhm.
or like when am I eating and really what is it I'm eating at that time? But if someone were to walk away and just want to start with one um, exploring one lifestyle change or something they could add,
Ooh.
what would you suggest?
Um, it may be cliched, but breath work.
Hmm.
Um, like, and I started thinking about this more, but like when in doubt, breathe in and breathe out. Um, Taking a deep breath in, deep breath out, and doing it a couple times, like the science shows, will rebalance the nervous system. And it's like the more you do it, the more likely you'll be in that balanced state. But you can use that even to shift out of like a revved up, like maybe an overwhelmed, anxious state, or like, I don't know, shame spiral or something like that. Or decision making, like decision fatigue and indecisiveness are also common symptoms in people with ADHD. So
Mm.
just take a couple deep breaths in, a couple deep breaths out, like bring yourself to the present moment. It's like one of the most powerful forms of mindfulness, and it activates that vagus nerve that I talked about that sends a lot of information from the body to the brain. So then you're sending like almost like these really affirming calm signals to the brain so that the brain can tell the rest of the body that it can be calm and function the way it's meant to function. Yeah, and yeah, like breath work is amazing. And if you think about the anatomy, and you guys can look this up, but like look up a picture of the respiratory diaphragm, it's literally shaped like a cape. So like, and it's one of the main muscles involved in respiration, in breathing. So it's like it's your internal superhero. So like that's what breath is. So yeah, that it's one of the best places to start to
Is
help you
breath
then
work.
figure out where to go next. Yeah. And especially because the emotional component I've seen for patients that have more patients who the emotional side of things is like the bigger part of their experience aren't necessarily able to do a lot of the nutritional changes or other changes until they address that emotional component. It's a lot because it's there's work involved in lifestyle, right? Like it's not like when you go to a conventional doctor and they're like, here's a pill for your anxiety, which
Mm.
they work. Like they can be life-saving for a lot of people if you're on the right prescription, but there's more to it.
Mm. Well, who would have thought that emotion, diet, nutrition, ADHD, and hormones would have affect a human being's body
Yeah.
day-to-day life existence, and how
Yeah.
amazing that we can provide this knowledge to the world so that maybe we can help one person not feel
Hmm.
alone through this journey. Because I like when I was even younger, and you mentioned like brain fog, like I
Hmm.
had to learn a lot of these things. I know you did too, through the hard way of,
Yeah.
man, this is really hurting in my life. And I need to do something about it because I just want to feel like life fulfillment, just feeling okay that day. So just want to like recap to our listeners that how much ADHD does impact this, and that
Yeah.
if we just can like just take a moment to pause, like Dr. Cristine said, is taking that deep breath through our noses to actually like regulate in the moment to see what's actually happening for us. So
Yeah.
I think taking a pause to breath is something so overrated, but I've been recently reminding myself to do this. And it's surprising how quickly I'm able to self-regulate by taking a pause and actually taking a
Yeah.
deep breath. Yeah, it's when I say overrated, because it's like it's the cheapest advice you'll ever get in your life, but like why was it so hard? I was resistant to taking those pauses until I was able to see the benefits of it, like the
Right.
return on investment. So did we miss anything with, related to gut and ADHD?
I don't think so. I think I told you guys a lot, and thank you all for like being on this ride and taking a moment to digest, like literally digest everything that I said. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
No,
really
I think we
excited to
covered a lot.
take to you mentioned a lot of great key points in here, like taking a look at the respiratory diagram. Like you said a lot of things in here that I will like look up after here so I can better understand that
Mhm.
big picture of how our brain and our bodies and now the gut all works. So having that big picture thinking is really helpful for us with ADHD. So that being
Yeah.
said, how can our listeners, get in touch with you, or, get sign up for a discovery call with you?
Sure. Yeah. If they go to key health n as in November d.com, that's my business. It's Key Health and Wellness. Caveat, I will be redoing the website, but you can go on, you can kind of see an overview of things. And on my website, you can schedule like an alignment/discovery call. If you're interested in the naturopathic side of things, or just if you have questions about if it's appropriate. If you want to do the craniosacral, you can just go ahead and self-schedule. I know we didn't talk a lot about how that affects ADHD, but that's okay. I could do a whole podcast probably on that. But
Sorry, I didn't do
yeah, I
that.
am on Instagram. My Instagram place is not strong right now. I'm like in the process of learning how to do that, which is really fun. But yeah, that's where people can find me.
And what's your Instagram?
It's at Dr. Cristine, and it's Cristine CR. Istine. And it'll say, you'll find, it should say my business, Key Health and Wellness LLC.
No, and I also want to acknowledge, I thought your website, when I looked at it a few months ago, when I saw you speak, I saw Dr. Cristine speak in person. She blew me away because I
Thank you.
have all of the, if you can ask me anything about executive function, I can answer it. But when I heard about the anatomy of the body, and like, I don't have that education. And it was like, it
Right.
blew me away that there was so much more to this. So I, you're definitely an asset for this type, for the gut
Yeah.
health and, you know, how the body responds to ADHD. So I just want to say thank you for being in this space. We need more people like you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, so I wanted to say your website clearly says how you offer
Yeah.
services and like what is entailed. So the listeners, you'll be directed very clearly. And as always, thank you all for listening. Like, I really enjoy bringing on other ADHD professionals to help, you know, emerge our worlds, to help better understand how ADHD presents itself to us.
Mm.
So thank you, Dr. Cristine, for being here with us. And thank you
Thanks
to
for the
all
opportunity,
listeners.
Juliana, and for everything that you do. Like, I think having the holistic healthcare combined with like the coaching is probably like the best thing someone could do for themselves. So,
Thank you. Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay. Seeking professional guidance, adapting effective coping mechanisms, and fostering a supportive environment are key steps toward managing ADHD successfully. Moreover, personal growth hinges on the ability to navigate setbacks and embrace change. By reframing negative thoughts from past failures, individuals can cultivate resilience and perseverance. Empowering oneself with problem-solving strategies and growth mindset paves the way for transformative experiences and meaningful progress. Remember, the power to change behaviors and overcome obstacles lies within each individual, waiting to be harnessed for personal evolution and fulfillment. With that, without further ado, let's dive into how we can start addressing each of these areas. So, as we know, ADHD and our environment greatly are impacted by one another. So what that means is our environment is where, when we are sitting down to go do work, and what is happening around us in our environment. Are we in a space that is conducive to the way we think, and are we able to actually have output of our work by the end of the day in the environment we are in? So just to better understand, that is what, when I mention environment, that's what I mean. Are you able to get your questions answered? Are you able to have a space where you can either have music on or not have music on in a way that makes sense for you? So first, setting up our environment that allows us to work and be interested in our work. So then also understanding the impact of our environment with our ADHD. So just taking a step back to acknowledge, is my environment helping me succeed at work? And am I actually getting things done that I want done in the environment that I am in at work? So that is something for you to get curious about. So another thing that it really plays a role in our, you know, environment and us to be able to get work done is to have coping strategies for individuals with ADHD as a performance disorder. So what that really means is in moments when we have a harder time self-regulating. So let's say a problem arises at work in real time, and you're having a hard time dealing with this problem. And because it just randomly happened, whether you're being accused of something or your work wasn't where it was supposed to be. I'm just throwing a few examples. Your coworker sent a mean email, but they didn't mean to say it that type of way. So in situations in real time when you are trying to deal with a problem and cope with what's happening in real time, this is a great time to have self-regulation, you know, coping tactics and strategies, workarounds for you that can help you problem solve in the moment. So there's something for you to get curious about, you know, when you are having a problem at work, how are you able to let it go? How are you able to find, you know, ease with yourself so that you can keep going on with work and not bring that problem home with you. So it really takes some, being honest and transparent with yourself to like start getting curious about problems that happen at work and how you can start maneuvering them. Because at the end of the day, we want you to be able to leave work without bringing work home with you. So, how can we help you transition from, okay, I have a problem mindset to being, okay, I'm just working through this happened. How can I, problem solve through the workday to help regulate your emotions? That's something you can get curious and start to think about. And so another thing about, our environment and ADHD and like this, idea of it being a performance output with our ADHD is also our perception is our reality, but also are we interested in what we're focused on? So if you are having a hard time staying focused on your work tasks or what is being asked of you, it's something really great is to ask yourself, like, what gets my brain going in the morning? How can I get my brain interested in doing this? What can I do to make this interesting for me? So these are areas for you to explore how to, make work interesting for you so that you can get your work done. So you could also say intensifying your interest. So another, viewpoint you can have is when you're having a hard time finding and connecting interest to completing work tasks and fulfillment, how can you add in creativity or character strengths so that you can be able to get your work done? So what does creativity look like for you in while doing work that keeps your interest? So if you are someone who has more of a creative mind and works better with, having, doing work creatively, whether you're seeing your work visually, adding color, having different, using clay, how can you use creativity to your benefit to create interest for yourself? So, moving on is like what I really could, if I could do anything for you as my listeners, would be that you don't take problems that happen at work home. So, in a perfect world, we would be able to leave our what happened at work, the problems, and go home and transition into a calm evening routine. So just, to shed light that, ADHD and, having the ability to self-regulate in the moment, to help us reduce the feeling of how intense that problem is in our brain and our body. So, just being able to reflect on how can I transition from my workday to my after work routine so that I can also be successful with my lifestyle routines to keep me all balanced. Because I find for me that if I'm not balanced in one area of my life, it really impacts the other areas of my life. So we really want to focus on how can we make this doable for you so that you can live the life that you want. Also, when we are the next topic I want to talk about is overcoming negative thoughts and behavioral change. So when we are at work, something about ADHD is our self-talk, our self-thoughts of how we believe, of who we are, how we believe like ourselves, like being confident in our ability to be present and be part of this group. So what I'm saying to you is throughout the workday, if you're someone who experiences negative thoughts and negative emotions, to acknowledge those negative thoughts and emotions as they are occurring and to insert empowering thoughts about yourself. So something for you to get curious about is what can you say to yourself in response when your brain is saying negative things about yourself, like, oh, I can't finish this task. Oh, I can't do this. Like, I'm not qualified for this. Or, yes, you are qualified. Yes, you can do this. So what kind of thoughts would you like to replace that are self-empowering to help you get these things done? So that's something for you to get curious about is, what self-empowering thoughts can you say to yourself during negative thought times? So that being said, if you are interested in learning more about how to empower yourself during the workday, or if you would like to learn more coping strategies and workarounds to overcome negative self-talk and how to increase your work performance at work by tying in interest and creativity, please feel free to visit my website to just schedule a complimentary discovery call to see if we would be a good fit working together. And as always, please keep up with your ADHD and yourself, learning about yourself. And I am here for you, and I am one of your #1 fans, and you're never alone. So that, without further ado, thank you for being here. Welcome to Easy ADHD Coaching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.